Hi, my name is Matt Kosterman. I'm a 56-year-old white guy living in Chicago, Illinois. For the first 50 plus years of my life, I didn't think I was allowed to be here. Not just here in Chicago, but here, on Earth, in a body. I suffered from depression for most of my life. I smoked my first joint at age 11 and had my first drink of Southern Comfort straight from the bottle at age 13. While the cannabis never really took hold as an addiction, I drank alcohol for the next 20 years, many times to excess. In 1998, I began psychotherapy, and in the year 2000, I started on antidepressants. I spent 12 years on them and 15 years in traditional talk therapy. Meanwhile, I built a successful business, became a father to 2 amazing girls, and rehabbed an old house in a nice suburb. I did all the things. In 2010, I went through divorce, foreclosure, and bankruptcy. Fun times. After much flailing about, I got my head on straight in 2015, only to begin experiencing severe chronic pelvic pain along with fibromyalgia. I spent nearly 3 years in the Western medical system trying desperately to heal. In 2018, out of money and out of patience, my healing journey really kicked into gear after my first magic mushroom trip. The years since have been an amazing and challenging ride. I've traversed the physical and not so physical worlds and been fortunate to work with many, many talented healers. As a result of all my efforts, I now find myself in a place of receiving, contentment, and prosperity, the likes of which had eluded me for most of my life. There's a man named Daryl Anka who channels a being called Bashar. Bashar describes the process of engaging with a healer, that of giving yourself what is essentially a permission slip to move towards wholeness, healing, and right relationship. This podcast is an effort to share some of what I've learned and introduce you to some of the people and ways that literally gave me what feels like my permission slip for existence. It's also an effort to continue to spread the word that the traditional Western medical system, while effective for a great many things, is not necessarily the be-all end-all solution to every health problem, especially when the problem may be more spiritual than it is physical, as it was in my case. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoy it. Please like, subscribe, and do all the social media things that help spread the word. Share these links with people directly in your community. It is my sincere hope that you and others will benefit from my experiences. I'm here today with Alefiyah Lindo, and we are going to talk about, as usual, all things consciousness. So Alefiyah and I recorded this once before, but we had some technical issues, and so we're doing it again, and it's going to be even better. So Alefiyah, thanks for being here, or me being here with you. Thanks for making time.
Well, thank you for inviting me onto this podcast. I'm really excited about our upcoming conversation.
Yeah, me too. So why don't you tell people about what it is that you do currently, and then we'll go into deeper.
Yeah, I currently practice as a transformation coach, and I work with subtle energy to help people release stuck patterns.
And tell us a little bit about how you do that.
So I have a background in psychotherapy, and I bring that into my practice where I use the mind to identify through cognitive behavioral therapy and tools like that what the belief systems are. And so we're really kind of looking at, let me back up. I look at the physical body as energy. So we're made out of energy, and there's energy all around us. And what I'm learning is we have these fields of subatomic particles that surround us. Some people call it the auric field. And what I've learned recently is how to access that auric field. And so when I'm working with someone, I am looking at the layers that kind of surround us and bring that into our physical experience.
So you're an intuitive, both on the energetic level and on the visual level. You're actually able to see the auric colors, the auric field?
Yes. So it's not only visual, but I have a sense of it. So I can feel the information coming through. Mm-hmm. So it's a knowing. Mm-hmm. Primarily it's seeing, hearing, and knowing. Those are the 3 clairs that I use on a regular basis.
And it sounds like from our conversation earlier that the seeing is a newer one that you're developing, or no? Or you're...
It is, in the last few years when I didn't always realize that I had this ability to work with energy. And so when I started exploring this, So being a psychotherapist for 20 years, and then I got into the world of the lymphatic system. So I got trained as a lymph node release therapist. And then that led me into the world of fascia. And so as I'm kind of working with these different modalities, it opened me up to the subtle energy that surrounds us. And so I have a good sense of what that feels like under my fingertips as I'm working with someone, but it's also a visual that appears in my mind's eye is the best way I can describe it.
Sure. Yeah. So let's back up even further. So you were a psychotherapist, and I believe you said before that a social worker, clinical social worker.
Yes. And before that, I was in business management. So I was in the marketing world
Okay.
for a hot second.
For a hot second, yeah, I can relate to that, having come through that world. And let's take people sort of to your origin story. I think when I started working through my trauma, I had this sense that I was the only person in the world that had trauma. Right. And I was weird, and come to find out many years in that no, pretty much everybody has some kind of trauma.
Yeah.
And so what were your
well, that's an
things?
interesting point that you bring up, that there's this history of trauma. I truly, at this point in my life, believe that we're all walking trauma responses, whether it's a big one or a small one. But that's really kind of our way of navigating the world, so to speak, until we recognize that that's what's going on and we choose something different.
Yeah.
So for me, I was born in India. I grew up in Dubai, did my middle school there and high school. And I moved around right after that. So it's a lot of, going back to India for a few years of college, and then moved to Europe, and then made my way to the U.S. So there's been a lot of movement as far as calling a place home.
Yeah.
So that was one of the startings of that, where I really I never felt like I belonged anywhere.
Sure. And you were a woman in the Middle East.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
And so when you're Indian in, say, the Middle East, you're not really considered an equal. And being female had, it was almost like that was the other piece that added to it. So not only did I not feel like I belonged, I was discriminated against.
Yeah. Constantly less than.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I knew from the get-go that I needed to get out of there the
Sure.
minute I could. So I
Okay.
did.
Yeah.
And so just growing up with a lot of insecurities of who I was as a person. And I think maybe that's why I got into the world of social work, is I needed to help and make it better for those around me that couldn't maybe do it for themselves.
So you had done a short stint in business and realized that was not your calling.
No, very, very quickly. And it was very fascinating because I was 22 or 24 when I reached a point of, it was also an company that I worked for, and they went out of business. And so I was in this position of transition. And I kind of think back on my 20-some-year-old self when I asked myself this question: what would I want to be doing 10 years from now? Mm-hmm. And asking that question, I was like, I just want to help people. And that's what helped me transition to go back to school, get my master's in social work.
Okay.
And started this journey.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? This has been coming up for me a bit lately. It's, we're told that we need to be in the now and think about what's going on in the now. And you also have to sort of look at, where do I want to be? You may not get to that place.
Yeah.
But where do I want to be X years from now?
Yeah. And so this was when in my 20s, turning 50 this year, and I have a different perspective on that. What I do now is, what would my highest self look like? Mm-hmm. Or there's a desire that I'm experiencing right now. How would my highest self enact that? Or how would my higher self either carry myself, or what would I be eating or drinking? That's really kind of where I'm at. But I still, so it's almost like I do something very similar that I did back then.
but
from
just
a different.
at a different perspective,
Yeah.
deeper level.
Yeah.
Almost I follow the teachings of Melchizedek through Paul Selig, and they talk about the braiding of the wills.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's this personality self that has a will that I want to buy a new car, I want
Yeah.
to live in a house, and then there's another aspect of you that has a will.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think there's the way, I think we need to bridge those two.
Yeah,
Really.
the braiding of it, bring them together.
Yeah. And as we kind of braid these two worlds together, we realize that our desires in this current dimension is really our soul's calling.
Yeah. And they're valid.
Yes. And that's the point.
Right, because there's also this strain of like renunciate, right?
Right.
Where you can, go the priesthood or the monastery or the
Right.
monkship, whatever
Right.
and go into renouncing all material things.
Right.
And we live in a material world, as Madonna taught
Right.
us
Right.
many years ago.
And so my initially I started off my spiritual journey started when I was 19, and I started doing yoga, and I took Iyengar, BESSK Iyengar's first book.
That's deep.
And I just started practicing on my own.
Okay.
And so that was the beginnings of my journey. Fast forward into my 20s, that's where I also met my husband at a Buddhist temple. And so I was kind of practicing Buddhism for a while and doing a lot of meditations and a Vipassana retreat and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And it was almost like I had to be austere. I had to kind of sit in meditation for an hour and not move. And what I'm learning now is it's more of a dance. It's a balance where you're really kind of recognizing what brings me into alignment, and keeping me out of my mental construct.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I also did a Vipassana retreat in 2016, and just this last weekend I was going to do a full day retreat down on the University of Chicago campus, and I opted to do a 2-hour. I've been working to sit more, and it's very challenging for me to sit. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but it is.
Yeah. Well, I because I've done it, and I've done the hour-long sits and felt a lot of pride in that, I'm realizing that it's not about the sitting necessarily, but it's about going inward and creating silence there.
And going to the observer space, going to the
Yes.
to the witness.
Yes.
And watching the monkey mind go dancing around.
Right. So it's not about stopping thought.
Right. That was my going into Vipassana for anybody who has that on their, agenda. You're not likely going to stop the thoughts.
Right.
I had one experience, a brief experience of that with my coach years ago, Melissa Ford, and she took me through a guided thing where I literally experienced my thoughts as little snakes, and they like all disappeared into the corners, and
Oh, wow.
and for just a short time it was blank. And I thought, I'm going to go do Vipassana and get to this place again, right?
Yeah.
Well, you seldom get to the same place twice.
Yeah.
And the mind never stopped, although it was a very beautiful experience, even though the mind did not stop.
Yeah. Yeah. And I kind of look at life as a constant expansion and contraction. And so we may want to contract and come inward, and then we take that and you bring it back out into your external world and you come back in. So it's almost like we're expanding our consciousness and contracting it.
Right. And seldom is, because the universe is expanding, my experience, seldom is the contraction, does it take you back to less than the last expansion?
Absolutely.
Like you're always expanding.
Oh, yes. So think of it as maybe 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Right. Or a half step back, or a step and 3/4 or whatever,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
never 2.5 steps
No.
back, although it might feel like it is.
Yes.
I've had that experience many times
Yeah.
where you think, the expansion stopped,
Right.
but it never really stops.
Right.
So impressive that you got into yoga through Iyengar's book, because I bought it and it was so dense. I just was like, oh yeah, this is not my, this is not my thing. So yoga, meditation, business world, calling to help people. Got your LCPC, or what was the
LCSW.
LCSW social
So it's
worker, right?
licensed clinical social worker.
And what was your experience with between the meditation and the yoga, did you feel like, I think, what are the sanskaras? What are they you're popping in meditation? Did you feel like you cleared a lot through the yoga and the meditation, or where did you feel like you started to really come into alignment? What was the catalyst?
I think it was the energy work that
And
I
the
got
energy
into.
work. So later.
So later, like 5 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so in my 40s.
And yeah, sure.
Yeah, so it feels like I have always been a seeker, constantly looking for how to improve. In the beginning, it was how do I improve my health? So my background, my mom really raised us as from a holistic mindset. So if you were sick, you would kind of use a natural remedy for a cold, or if you had leg pain, she'd wrap some sort of salve and put a Band-Aid around it. And so it was almost, that was kind of that was my mindset, that I can find, my body can heal itself. I mean, these are my words now, but I think back then it was a known feeling that my body can heal itself. I just need to provide it the support.
The time, the space, the rest.
Yeah, and so I spent a lot of time in the world of eating healthy and fermenting foods and being vegan and all kinds of stuff. Later to realize that those were all kind of ways to stretch my physical body, and then coming to a realization that none of those are just the path, right?
The only
path.
Sure.
Yeah. It's we, each individual, I think we have to find what brings us into balance, and that cannot be what society says is the thing to do.
And it can change.
And absolutely.
And it does, and it will change. There's for most people. I mean,
Yes.
maybe there's people who can be vegans for their whole
Yes.
life, and it works. I mean, similar to you, I've tried a lot of things. I tried veganism for 3+ years, wasn't in alignment.
Yeah.
Was carnivore for 3+ years. That brought me back to health, and then that's falling away.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it all kind of stems from really recognizing what is the belief that I hold that's driving my life. And so for me, when I was up until not too long ago, it was I need to attain these states of consciousness, or I need to experience enlightenment as the end goal. But because I have a daughter, I was like, you know what, I'm going to put that off for a while. But I still meditated, and the way I meditate was I have to meditate a certain way because that's how I'm taught is the right way to do it. Not realizing that I have the potential to find my balance. And so I don't meditate the same way anymore. I no longer sit for an hour without moving. I may move, I may lay down. My new thing is I like sensory deprivation, so I will put an eye mask on. I really looked down on eye masks in the past.
Oh, did you really? Oh,
It's
interesting.
like that's not how you meditate.
That's cheating.
That's cheating.
That's cheating. What would Goenka say? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
To an eye mask.
Yeah.
Have you tried the float tanks before?
I have, yes.
How do you like those?
Those are great, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't need them anymore in the same way because I can get into that quiet. So the reason why I like the sensory deprivation is to kind of remove external stimulus.
Sure. So you put your plugs in or headphones?
I don't know. I just
you're
put
able
in
to
that
block it out.
eye mask because I'm visual. So I can put my eye mask on and I'm still seeing.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
It does.
It blocks out the white light from the outside.
Yeah. I don't see anything in my mind's eye, but blocking the vision definitely helps because so much is coming in to my field. So you worked for years with clients,
yes.
You were a caseworker for social work with the state? Or
with the state I worked with. So I specialized in child and adolescent mental health. So I started there and I worked with families in the foster care system and all that good stuff. And then I became a therapist. I did a lot of family systems work within the world of therapy.
The internal family systems, yeah.
And so I was in private practice for a very long time.
Yeah. How long were you in the state system in the social
I want
work?
to say 5 years.
Okay. And what would you equate that to in dog? I mean, that's got to be intense.
It is, yeah. And I, when I think about when we driving, like I worked in the Cabrini Green area when it was called in the west side of Chicago.
Yeah.
I worked at Proviso East for a little bit. It's
in Maywood.
In Maywood.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I worked in the Evanston area as well with a company called House Calls Counseling, where we did.
You worked with Billy?
Yes, you know Billy.
Billy was my first therapist.
Oh my gosh!
Oh my God!
That's
Yeah, we were
hilarious.
just figuring that out now.
Oh wow!
Yeah, Billy Kaplan. Hi, Billy.
Yeah.
So you traveled around?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, amazing!
So I was driving around. Yeah.
What a small world. Yeah, that was how we came to my former wife and I. She found him. It was my first therapist. She had tried to take me to a therapist in Rochester, New York, 30 some years ago, and after 10 minutes, the woman wanted to put me on Prozac, and I'm like, "Get the fuck out of here! You're crazy."
Yeah.
But then it was appealing because we had a very busy life, and Billy would come to us in the West Loop.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, funny. Okay.
Small world. 6
Yeah.
degrees, they say, right?
Yeah, not even two maybe.
Yeah.
So you traveled out doing that, and then you decided, okay, I've had enough of this. I'm going to go into private practice.
Yeah, and it's all, I think it just feels like from the get-go, I had this inner calling for different things, and I followed that. But because my conditioning was so strong that I didn't allow that to flourish, I kind of put a cap on it for the most part, and functioned from how a dutiful.
Yeah, what you were supposed to do.
Yeah. So.
And was the move into psychotherapy from a duty or from an inner calling?
Well, if I was really honest, I think it was. I've always been interested in how the brain works.
Okay.
So ever since I was very young, I wanted to do biology and psychology, but I didn't have the grades in school, so I couldn't do biology or become a doctor or any of that.
Yeah.
And so then I ended up and kind of meandered my way around and then finally ended up doing mental health.
Yeah. And now you're accessing the brain and the mind and the brain
absolutely.
in a totally different way than a doctor would.
Yeah. And I'm so grateful that was my journey because I think this was the fast route to where I'm at, to what my soul's calling was.
Yeah.
So initially, to go back to your question about why I did this, I think it was initially to help others and not knowing that I was actually helping myself.
Yeah, which is ultimately, I think, why so many people end up, they either have some kind of an opening and then they want to help others, or through their own work on their trauma, they realize that it's helping others that helps them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I'm in a very different mind space now where I no longer have this desire to fix or heal anyone. And that's really where I was. And I've moved into really coming into alignment for myself and then allowing my life to unfold and just kind of enjoying that. And if in that process I am helping someone, that's exciting. But that's really not my intention anymore.
Yeah. Speak maybe to this idea, because I have my own ideas on it, but that we have a purpose, right, in our life, and we have to fulfill we have to find our purpose.
Yeah.
Like singularly, like there's a purpose.
Right.
And what are your thoughts on that? How does that inform your life?
Well, it's interesting because I think I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what my purpose was. And being a therapist, I reached a point where I didn't find myself in great mental health. I was not happy as I thought I should be. Being a therapist and not feeling that joy that I'm trying to help others, very, very low place in my life. As you can imagine, that's your line of work.
Well, you're in it all day. You're in the muck.
Right. And it's not only the muck. It's if I can't help myself, I felt like a fraud. Let's put it that way. The imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome.
Where if I can't feel excited all the time, how am I helping other people?
Sure.
And so, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
We were just on the purpose and
purpose, yes.
Yeah, and like finding one's purpose. You thought your purpose was I need to help other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when I entered the world of energy and understanding energy intuition and energy medicine and subatomic particles and the quantum field, I realized that the purpose is within each of us. Like it's already there, and it's a soul's calling.
Yeah.
And so it's not something that's outside of us. And so that was my seeking journey in the past, right? My purpose is to save people or help them feel better. But But when I worked with energy, I realized that my purpose is really coming into alignment. And from that space, what happens is we find how we want to manifest in this world. And so in a nutshell, that is our purpose, and from my perspective.
Yeah, 100%.
Once we bring ourselves, each one of us, into alignment, then our life will unfold, and focusing on each moment is really the purpose. So I no longer think of it as this one big thing that's out there that I need to go and aspire to.
Yeah. And that was where I thought you were going to go. And my learnings as well over the past 10 years is that.
And I have to be very honest that right now, ever since I have worked with this world of energy and I've really come into this alignment for myself, this is the happiest I have been in my life. I have so much joy and happiness for no good reason, right? It feels like it's not that for no good reason, because I have so much to be thankful for, and I have so many supportive people in my life, my family, friends. I mean, there's so much going on, but I think it's almost like you attract that into your life.
Oh yeah, 100%. So the mechanics of it, where you're in private practice, and did you all of a sudden hang up a shingle and say, I'm doing energy medicine now? Or
it was so absolutely. It actually I had to really work through my own insecurities.
Sure.
Of taking myself off of Psychology Today, which is a listing where people find therapists.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So that was a big step for me but it was in that moment that I decided that I have to create this transition. I cannot be a therapist and an energy intuitive at the same time. Because the models are different. It was creating a paradigm shift. And so it was one of the most scariest things I've done, because that means if I no longer am visible to the world, how are they going to find me?
Right.
And if I'm no longer a therapist, what am I?
What am I? Who am I?
How do I practice?
Yeah. What's the mask that I'm putting on now?
Right. But so it's one thing that I've learned is it's really following the breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
And it's about trusting that the universe has your back. And those were the few things that, for some reason, I was able to adopt those values. And that made it a lot easier. So I didn't exactly know what was going to happen or what the next steps were, but I knew that I could no longer function as a therapist.
Yeah. Interesting. So, and how did you feel about, where was your nervous system in all this, right? Because I see when I work with people, you can, and in my own work, you can say trust, but if your body is saying no, so did you feel like you had, because of your work with yoga and with meditation, you had pretty much calmed the body and the nervous system?
Yeah. I didn't have a lot of the fight or flight. It wasn't as overt.
As it had been.
As it had been, yeah. And hindsight, when I look back, and as I was, in the past when I was meditating and sitting there in 1 hour long meditations, you would think my heart rate would be lower and my body would be in a relaxed state. I thought I was, but I now realize that I wasn't, because I had a very long labor with my daughter, and as I look back on it, it seems like my entire body was in a contracted state.
Oh, interesting.
And that's also the time when I was meditating and breathing and all that stuff. So there was something that I was missing.
Yeah. Which you found to be, like, what was the missing piece?
The alignment.
That was in your life.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And when I say alignment, I'm really talking about, why are we doing things? So what's the reason behind the things we do? And things that bring us joy, things that don't bring us joy. A lot of times we're so conditioned that we have to do a certain thing.
Yeah.
And when we dig deeper, and that's really what I do in my coaching practice, is looking at, what is my conditioning? Whether it's parenting or for myself, how do I want to live my life? For the longest time, I felt like I needed to cook a fresh meal every meal.
Because you had grown up that way.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, so the mental narrative was, if I didn't do that, then my body wasn't getting the right nutrients, and my child's body is not getting the right nutrients.
And I'm not a good mother.
And I'm not a good mother.
Good wife.
Exactly.
Good spouse. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I had to really shed all of that.
Yeah.
and free myself from my mental narrative of how I was living my life.
And talk about the process of shedding. How was that simply, what did that look like for you?
It was really kind of being honest with myself. If I didn't, so being, I would say I was a very passive person for a good chunk of my life. And that was so that I wouldn't.
Let's just let that. They'll just, my editor will just cut this out and we'll start that again. The siren is it? Oh, it's first Tuesday.
Is that right?
Yeah, the test.
Oh.
I think they go for 30 seconds or something.
What were we talking about?
Your process of shedding.
Oh, yeah.
And shedding the programming and what are the, I'm looking for like, what are the mechanics, just to kind of give people, what are the mechanics? Because there's obviously an infinite number of ways in. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to show with, what was your permission slip? What allowed you to let those things go?
Yeah.
Obviously the first step is to see them, recognize them, that there is this programming that's running your life.
Yeah. That's a long one.
Yeah, it's either, I think it might be a minute. Yeah, they must not run. Well, we don't have them in the city, so it's been a while.
That's so funny that I totally didn't, like, it's white noise.
Yeah, that you didn't even hear it. Yeah, and I've done some work on film sets, and as an audio guy.
Oh, okay. So you're more sensitive.
So
to
I'm not a huge oral person, but I'm like, oh, okay, no, there's something going on, and we don't want that in the background.
Yeah.
Because it's getting picked up. That's the other reason to wear the headphones, so you know what's actually coming through the microphone.
Oh, nice.
My God, yeah, it is a long one. Yeah, I filmed an interview with a guy at my apartment, and usually my neighbors are gone, and of course that day the cleaning people came. Which is, part of the reason why I don't do much with audio. And audio people they're, like we all are, right? We all are, but they're a different breed. Especially for me, who's somebody super visual, it's just, the audio guys hear everything.
Oh.
Just like I see everything. I mean, I'm seeing how the light's falling and what color is the light.
Right, yeah.
Right. It's how are we what's our way of interpreting frequency, and you're in the subtle realms.
Yeah.
Pulling it, and I'm there as well, but not to the same degree. I can feel the stuff of other people in my body.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're more somatic. I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't have that as much. Maybe it's part of my conditioning.
No, I feel right into. Like, oh, they come in and sit for a picture, and I'm just like, oh yeah, you got something.
Yeah.
I don't know necessarily what it is, but you got something.
Yeah, yeah.
And the hypervigilance as a child that I developed.
Oh, that's right.
So I'm like, is everybody okay? Right.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll jump back into talk about. So you have this programming. You're recognizing that you have this programming. How are you clearing it? What are your ways of?
So the first thing I do really is explore where in my life am I not honest. So if one was to kind of look at that, it's as simple as saying, okay, make a list of the things that I do in my life and which of these I don't want to be doing.
Yeah, so like cooking a full dinner every night to be the good mother, to be the good spouse.
Right. And a lot of this is really part of the subconscious mind. It's not something that it becomes a part of my identity. It became a part of my identity.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't until I took a pause and slowed my life down to recognize what are these patterns. So we start with what's on the surface layer, which is very easy to find because it's right in your face. And then you look for what triggers you. So those are some really easy ways to identify.
So as you're going through your day and you're like, you're feeling something is off, out of alignment.
Yeah.
And then changing it.
Right.
The next day or the next time.
Right. And I think that was the hardest thing for me was to say, I'm not going to focus on making a fresh cooked meal every single meal.
Sure.
It's not going to happen.
How did the family take it?
It was actually a very natural progression. My husband eats anything, so he was totally fine.
Uh-huh.
And I think the way it's changed for us now is that we do more takeout, which is so freeing because now I no longer carry that guilt of eating a meal
Right.
that won't nourish my body. It's a belief, right?
Sure, but if you go back to prior to that, like the thought,
Yes.
like we create so much fear around this change that everybody's gonna
Yeah.
lose their shit, and oh my God, mom's not cooking dinner,
Yeah.
and it just kind of it falls away if you let it.
And what's interesting is it's almost like my daughter made it easier for me because she didn't want to eat what I was cooking. So it could have gone two ways, right? It could have been like, I could have been offended
Yeah.
that I'm not cooking good enough, or I'm not feeding my child.
Yeah.
Or I'm not nourishing my child, right? This is all a mental construct.
Right. And so ultimately, to sum it up, it would be sort of you tested out other ways of being.
Yes. But it starts with it's really kind of focusing on what is in my highest good, what feels right in my body. So going back to the visceral feeling.
The visceral feeling. And being able to trust your body. I think,
Yes.
in my own journey, first there was no connection with the body.
Yeah.
There was no, and then you develop a connection. In my case, it was through psychedelics and through body work, but then it's trusting that the information, and the only way to, I think, to really trust is to test and to take small and make changes. And I think it seems this is integration, right?
Yeah.
So you had enough awareness through your meditation, through your yoga, through your therapy work, and people mirroring it back to you.
Absolutely. But it was huge when I reached that point of feeling so low in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was like the catalyst.
Usually is.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And it was like, okay, this can't be it. I think it made a big difference because my daughter was 12 at the time, or 10, and she was really young. I was like, what kind of a life am I leading for her?
If you're miserable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so it's almost like it was like this plea, there has to be another way.
Yeah.
What is the other
Show
way?
me.
Show me. Show me.
Got to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah. And similarly, mine, I allowed it to go further. It was into a full-on crisis of divorce, foreclosure, bankruptcy, but it was through a deep knowing of this is not what I want to model for my children.
Yeah.
It looked like a great relationship
Mm-hmm.
on the surface, and it wasn't what I wanted to model.
Yeah.
But I had to have the full-blown crisis.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things that I'm learning about manifesting is it's almost like we're constantly putting these desires out there. And we're putting these out there, but when something happens in our lives, and if it's not positive, it's almost like, why is this happening?
Mm-hmm.
But you've set a desire in motion, and it can either be positive or negative the way you get there.
Yeah.
And so I think kind of realizing that, it was almost like a surrender of, okay, it doesn't matter how I'm going to get there. I know that there is this forward momentum.
And I know that this ain't it.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, that's like, this
Yes.
is not what I want.
Right.
Show me something different. And
Right.
the path there can be easy.
Yeah.
The path there can be
Yeah.
a little bit more difficult.
It can be a bumpy ride or it can be a smooth ride. I mean, you can choose.
Yeah. Yeah, you absolutely can choose.
Yeah.
So talk about how you're taking all of this, 30 years worth of wisdom and working with people. What does an engagement look like?
So I
with a client?
no longer do individual one-off sessions.
Mm-hmm.
It's when people work with me, they're working in a package format, and I call it a deep dive. And it's about transformation. So it's working with individuals who are looking to create a shift. And I call it paradigm shifts because we're no longer working from the same model that they're in right now. And I like to call it becoming more because there's no end, really.
No.
You're just becoming a better, more version of who you are.
Yeah, I love the Incredibles quote of "We'll be there when we get there."
That's right.
Wherever there is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's So it's multiple sessions over the course of weeks or months.
So it's pretty much a container that I provide that can include sessions. It's weekly contact, homework, and the way I kind of explain it is that what I'm doing for the individual is helping them create a paradigm shift by working with subtle energy. So let's go into that a little bit if you're interested.
Yeah, no, I would love that.
So you have the physical body, and imagine you have a ring of energy around you, and I call that the first layer.
So an inch or two off the body?
An inch or two, absolutely. Yeah. So that is really connected to your physical body, and I'll kind of go back to that. The second layer is, say, imagine it's a foot above your body, and that's the second auric field. And the third one is maybe a few feet beyond that. So I just work with the first three because anything beyond that, we're working with the Akashic records and all that. Yeah. So working with the physical manifestation and changing 3D reality, these three layers just seem to be most helpful. And the first layer is really where you have a blueprint of every aspect of your being, or your physical body. So your eyes, your heart, your lungs, your legs, everything has a blueprint in that specific field in perfection. So if you say you have high liver enzymes, I teach people how to go into their first auric field and connect with that perfection in that space, and then bring that into their physical bodies.
Of what a perfect level of enzymes would look like for their body.
Yes.
Because the body knows.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's stored in this first layer, that information.
Right. And so the second layer is your emotional body, and the third layer is your mental body. So if you want to think of the third layer as a place where all your beliefs are held. So when we're working with our physical experience, so say you have a belief that I'm not good enough, or money doesn't grow on trees. Let's just talk about that one, right? That belief creates a barricade in your auric field. So now instead of this information flowing freely between your body and these layers of energy, it's bumping up against stuff.
Yeah, the stuff that's stuck.
Yes.
Distortions in the field.
Yes. And so what I do really is I help people identify those distortions, clear them out so that they can have access. And that's really the free flow. So that is in a nutshell what I do.
And you're doing that through both talking with them and energetically.
Yes. So I kind of help move energy in their bodies by working with my physical body. So the recent thing that I'm kind of exploring is how do I move energy through my body and then connect? Because we're working with energy, we're not bound by space and time.
Yeah.
And so if someone's either sitting in front of me or sitting miles away, I can help them modify their energy.
And you also, I remember when I first met you, and what I remembered about you was that you read the chakra energy. So
I do.
The seven chakras.
That's kind of like the first stage of it.
The more core central channel running through the body.
And for anyone interested in the chakras, each chakra is connected to an auric field. So your first chakra is connected to the first auric field.
Okay.
And so there are these different patterns that kind of...
and then the second one being the sacral.
Yes.
So that's going to be,
that's
that was the
emotions.
emotional body.
And the third one, which is your solar plexus, is the mental body. So that's my sense of who I am.
And my will.
My will, exactly.
And my will.
Exactly.
And then we start getting to the heart. Now we're getting into love.
Yes, exactly.
And then as we raise up, we're getting all the way out there.
Yeah. And that's why I've kind of, in my practice, I've created 3 phases. So it's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 is really the jump start. Phase 2, I call it integration. So we're creating these new patterns, we're shifting beliefs, and now we're integrating it into the body. That's phase 2. And then phase 3 is really transformation. So if someone says, you know what, I want to double my income, or I want to no longer have knee pain.
Yeah.
Or I want to run a marathon.
Yeah, or I want to speak in front of 5,000
exactly.
people, whatever it might be.
So whatever their end goal is, that's transformation in my opinion. And that can vary, but you really I've figured this process out where it can be a step-by-step process to get someone to creating a shift.
Beautiful.
And so if I'm kind of not a runner and I want to run a marathon, I have to create a lot of paradigm shifts to get my physical body in the space of being able to run.
I mean, there's purely the physical. I mean, you need to get into shape, but there are also other...
Right. And what I'm realizing is there's the slow way, which is the physical, like you said, I can train every day, eat right. That's manipulating the physical body. But when you work with the energy world, that whole process can be expedited. And that's this new world that I'm entering into, and it's just so fascinating.
Amazing. So we worked together 2 months ago, and now you've got this one. I'm going to have to come back. I see what this is.
My life just keeps evolving
Keeps
so fast. I
unfolding.
can't keep track. Yeah.
So I want to throw maybe, I don't know, a little bit of a curveball at you, because we were talking about this earlier with human design. And human design, which was for those of you listening who don't know, it's a beautiful model of how we're structured as energy types that was channeled by a man named Ra Uru Hu. But it holds that, I think it was in the late 1700s, we shifted into being 9-centered beings. And I'm curious if this shows up at all in your work with chakras, because we've now added an Anja center and a G center. Yeah. And I don't know if, the traditional sort of was the Hindu system of the chakras. Is that where it came from?
Yeah. So the traditional model of the chakras that I kind of started with was the 7 chakras. I actually work with 11.
11.
12,
okay.
12 to be honest.
Okay.
Yes. And that's really the auric fields, right? And so the 7 is on the top of your head.
Right.
8 is a foot above your head.
Okay.
9 is right below your feet. 10 is a foot below your feet.
Okay.
11 is in your hands. And then 12 is really kind of, imagine you have, you're surrounded by this energetic egg, maybe 2 to 3 feet out. That's really your 12th auric field. So I call it this cocoon of love or energy. It is this field. It's cocooning you.
Sure. Yeah, and it can be tied in if you get into the whole torus of energy, the swirling.
Yes. And that's really where my mind's at right now. We're working with the toric fields.
Okay.
Because in my opinion, if I was to just kind of synthesize all that in a nutshell, everything is a torus field.
It's all right,
Yes.
all the way. Yeah, it's turtles all the way down.
Yeah,
right?
turtles all the way down. Absolutely.
Turtles and Tauruses, Tauri. I don't know what the plural is.
Yeah, it's fun stuff.
And so you are seeing, feeling, sensing these disturbances
Absolutely.
in people.
And what my hope is really to teach people how to do it themselves. And my passion really is working with individuals who have a vision for change for humanity in general, or just how they're showing up in this world, and helping them create transformations. So I know it's kind of silly, but in my mind's eye, I can see that. I can see the ripple effect that can have.
Yeah.
Versus me working one-on-one.
Yeah. One-on-one in a
therapeutic absolutely
context. I mean, you're working one-on-one.
Yeah.
But you're working to create bigger change than what you have seen.
Right.
And what I have seen is possible through therapy.
Right. Absolutely. And I think what I'm also learning with working with energy is it is a lot easier to bend time than our minds believe it is.
Yeah, because we've been programmed to believe that it's seconds or minutes are split into seconds.
And that's just so fascinating. I mean, it's amazing when you can enter that space. And that's really what I'm kind of offering in my practice is getting into that space of bending time, expediting the process.
Put that on your title, Alefiyah Lindo,
time bender. And what's so crazy is I was never interested in Star Wars and any of those kind of sci-fi movies ever.
No.
Until now that I'm in this world of energy, it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's been here. My husband and my daughter, they love this stuff. And during COVID, they binge watch, and I was never interested in it.
And now you're seeing what's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've found it fascinating as well to look back at that. I still remember going to see Star Wars. Was that 75? No, it was a little later than that. But there's the Orpheum Theater in Madison, Wisconsin. I remember standing in line. I remember the posters. I remember it was a seminal. And I didn't become this huge like sci-fi person. But now looking back, I was like, oh, they knew what they were talking about.
Yeah.
And also, I think that what's become clear to me in the past several years of my own journey is how much the psychedelic revolution, while it didn't continue like it looked like it might at one point, it influenced the music, all of the music that was written in the late 60s and into the 70s, that then seeded that in people's consciousness.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, if you look at the Beatles' journey, it's profound.
Yeah.
At what they went through.
Yeah, and that kind of makes me think about how we're all channels. I mean, we're constantly channeling. And all this amazing music that the Beatles wrote, or anyone else for that matter.
Yeah. Crosby, Stills, and the whole,
Or just any of these amazing movies that we were watching, right? I mean, it's sci-fi is to me, it's channeled.
Oh, for sure. And the other thing that I think was channeled, this came to me in of all things, a psychedelic trip, but I was like, oh, Bugs Bunny.
Yes.
Like the cartoons, like that was on so many levels.
Yes.
And the one that always sticks with me was the sheepdog and the wolf.
Right.
Remember that one where they would punch in, they'd come, they'd walk to work together and chatting, and they'd punch in, and they'd beat the shit out of each other. Right. And then they'd punch out, and then they would, have a nice night. Right. Yeah, you too.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, that is work. That is corporate America.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah. And that's the other thing that is everything. So as I mentioned earlier, we're all trauma responses, and we're all here to really heal generational trauma. The fact that it's being passed down and it's in our lap right now is we are here, we're assigned to deal with it.
Yeah.
But and however, we do have a choice. If we don't want to deal with it, that's totally fine as well.
Eventually, you're going to deal with it.
Well, you pass it down.
Yeah. Oh, we pass it down. Sure.
So what I mean is, if I choose not to deal with my issues or whatever the world is presenting to me, then I can easily just pass it down to my child.
Yep. Kick the can down the road.
Yeah. Yeah.
And do you feel that you're also karmically, you're going to work with it in another life?
Absolutely.
Like your daughter's going to have to work with it, and you're going to have to work it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's another, our soul's journey here is to have experiences, but also maybe call it releases, release, or come here to learn, really. It's a school, in my opinion.
It's a school, yeah.
And so we're here to learn a lesson, if we want to look at it that way, that our previous generations just didn't figure out or weren't able to process.
Right.
So now it's in my lab.
Yeah, they were learning other lessons.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just not the ones that they've passed on to us. And so what can we clear?
Yeah. And so a lot of the work that I do is we're not digging for, and that's really part of what I kind of leave behind from my past is I'm no longer looking for stuff. I'm no longer, let's go to the deep, dark depths of our world and find what's there. We don't have to do that. I call it a deep dive that I offer, but the deep dive is really kind of diving as far deep as our physical bodies and emotional bodies are allowing us to.
Sure, because the therapeutic model is let's go dig up your childhood and see what happened back then that's influencing you now.
Yeah.
And I worked with a coach a little bit. His name's Alex Mill, a wonderful man who was I think 14 years he spent as a Zen Buddhist monk, and then he has a coaching practice out in Colorado. And I was coming out of 12 or 15 years of therapy, and I had gone to the Meadows, and I was working with a Meadows therapist at the time. And then I had a couple conversations with him, and he's like, that's great and fine, but there comes a time when it's just holding you back.
Yeah.
Because you're constantly looking at the past to look at the now.
Absolutely. And the past comes from really our mind.
It doesn't actually exist.
Yes.
It's gone. It's done.
It's done. But our current reality is based on our imprints from the past.
Right.
And that's all the mind knows. And so if we are creating an expansion in our lives, and if we're really entering consciousness and creating this awareness, the mind has no clue how to get us there. So like we're talking about time bending, the mind has no clue how to do that.
It only knows linear time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so it's almost like we have to get our minds on board to say, I'm not trying to annihilate you. I need you. I want you. I love you.
Yeah.
Come on board.
It's the whole master and servant
Yes.
thing. It's a terrible master, but a great servant.
Yes. And I think that's an important point that you bring up, Matt, because once we realize that, we're not out to get anyone. No. It's all about integration.
Yeah. And you can literally, my experience has been that you can, people say, well, you can't change the past. That's programming.
That's programming.
You actually can change the past because you can change the story that you have about the past and what the memory is.
Yeah. And I've been actually playing around with that, and it is just fascinating.
It is wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think if anyone's interested, they can try that, especially if you have, for me, I'm actually working around with my daughter. She doesn't know that, but I'm kind of doing past work in myself where I have memories of something that I wish I could have gone back and changed. And I'm doing that.
Changing it.
So changing that memory in present time. And I'm not kidding you. our relationship is so different.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for most of my life, I thought that my parents' sole mission was to bring me into this world to make me miserable.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, right? That's what
Yeah, yeah.
we're here to screw the kids up, right? But
We're here to make them work.
right.
Why
But
else would you have kids, right?
Yeah,
That
I mean,
kind
I
of
didn't
thing.
want. I was estranged from my parents. I didn't want to talk to my parents, and now I have just conversations that are just fine with my father. My mother's crossed over, but and it was literally through changing
Yeah.
the memory.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I have what might first seem an unpopular take to people, especially history teachers. Based on my spiritual studies, I don't think we should teach history.
Yeah, I agree.
Because how are we going to forget it if we just keep pulling it in? How are we going to find a new way?
Well, I think the point is you can create a new narrative.
But they keep saying, oh, you need to learn history so you don't repeat it. Well, it's not working.
Yeah.
We keep repeating it.
Yeah.
We keep having wars.
It's no longer about history. I think it's about moving forward. How do you want to create your life? Forget about history.
Right.
Once we come into alignment, I think there is an inner knowing that comes up.
Yeah, and how do you want to create your life? And you can create it any way you want as long as you're not impinging on somebody else's way of creating it with a negative impact.
Yeah. We have all these sensors on our body.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's picking up subatomic information constantly. So the way I kind of look at it is I no longer want to go into my past so I don't repeat it. I'm actually going into the future or into these realms that have all this amazing data there.
And bringing it to the now.
Bringing it to the now.
To the now.
And so I no longer think of it as I want to get enlightened. I think I have a new way of looking at it, which is I want to bring enlightenment to this planet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, likewise.
And so I think that's kind of also driving my motivation for whatever I do.
Sure. Yeah, the enlightenment is not at some point in the future. It's right. It's right now.
Yeah.
Because everything is ultimately right now.
Yeah. And you have the expression heaven on earth. I think that really resonates with me because I can see how we can create that.
Yeah.
That's a really fun place
It's
to
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a great place to wrap it.
Yeah.
Heaven on earth.
Heaven
It's
on
not
earth.
in the
That's
future.
beautiful.
It's not when after you're gone.
Yeah.
You can create hell on earth too.
Yeah.
Your
And-
choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, the way just a quick couple of things to add, as I entered this world of energy, I also learned that we can communicate with animals.
Oh,
And that's part of our expansion into consciousness is you start communicating with animals, trees, plants, rocks. This microphone that's sitting here,
sure.
everything is energy.
It's all energy.
Mm-hmm.
Have you? So, two things. So, have you done any work with
Oh,
animals
tons of it because I do.
to help the animals or for your own?
So the way
Edification
I did this 12-week course on animal communication. And as part of that, I would kind of reach out to friends and say, hey, if you have a pet, I'd love to practice. And so that kind of became a thing where everybody was like, work with my animal.
I need to connect you with my daughter's cat, Oliver. He's very shy.
Yeah. And so, and I also had, this is probably a topic for another conversation, but we had two cats. One of them passed a couple of years ago, but the second one just recently passed in January. And that was on the heels, thank you, on the heels of my, this animal communication class.
Okay.
And I get goosebumps thinking about it because he had the most amazing passing I've ever experienced.
Oh, beautiful.
And he helped me learn through animal communication what he needed.
Okay.
And how I could provide that for him. And it's almost like he taught me hands-on healing because there was a part where I was putting my hands on him. But yeah, we can definitely talk more about that.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
So I guess to kind of bring it full circle, ultimately it's about recognizing that we're all one. Everything is interconnected. And then animals and our environment is part of that.
It's part of it. Yeah. I mean, I always like to bring, if you haven't read it, David Foster Wallace, he was an American author, brilliant mind. And he wrote the commencement address for Kenyon College.
Oh,
and it's called This is Water.
Ooh.
And it's about two fish swimming. Mm-hmm. And the one fish goes to the other, what's water?
Oh, I've heard of that, yes.
Yeah. And that was his commencement speech. Mm-hmm. But related to that, we're all one. Have you heard this theory? just read it recently that because they keep trying to observe electrons,
Yes.
and there's a theory that there's one.
Yes.
There's one electron, and it's making all of this.
Yeah.
And I think that, we all is one, and Bob Marley, and it goes to this idea, and you start getting into religion, which it starts like you're seeming to get into religion, but you're really not, because my belief through my teachings is that our biggest problem as humanity is that we think that we're separate from that which created us.
Yes.
Call it God, call it source, call it the flying spaghetti monster, whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
Alan Watts calls it the unstruck sound. And it's all vibration.
Yeah. That's all it is.
That we're all a part of at varying levels of this vibration, experiencing itself.
Yeah. And I think ultimately what matters is that you experience it yourself. And that's when the huge transformations happen.
Right.
And so the key is feeling.
Feeling. We're in a body.
We're in a body.
To feel. Yeah. And
Well, that's our instrument.
yeah.
Yeah.
But we've been so cut off from it through traumas, through programming, and through the thought that we are our body.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Well, thank you. This was such a fun conversation.
Thank you. It was great. So great to have it in person. I'm glad we did this. The technology is great, but there's still no substitute for
nice.
energy in the same room.
Absolutely.
So I'll have Alefiyah's information to contact her, and all this will be on the page. And thanks for doing this.
Well, thanks, Matt.
All right. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.